One missile opens mid-air, and suddenly 80 smaller bombs are falling toward the ground with no guidance system whatsoever. Each one hits a different spot across an area the size of 100 football fields. And up to 40% of them don't explode, they just sit there in the soil, armed and waiting. Over the past few days, Iran has launched over 100 of these missiles at civilian neighborhoods in Israel. This is how cluster munitions work, and understanding their engineering explains why they're banned under international law. To understand cluster munitions, we first need to understand the problem they were designed to solve. A conventional bomb hits one point and creates a single blast radius effective, but limited. If your target is tanks spread across a kilometer, or infantry scattered across a field, you'd need dozens of bombs to hit them all. Cluster munitions were engineered to solve this by turning one weapon into many. The architecture is straightforward. A parent munition carries smaller bombs called submunitions inside. Depending on the model, one dispenser can carry anywhere from 2 to over 600 submunitions. These can be delivered by aircraft, artillery shells, rockets, or ballistic missiles. Let's trace what happens from launch to impact using a typical cluster bomb. Once released, the parent munition follows a ballistic trajectory toward its target zone. At a pre-programmed altitude typically between 100 and 1,000 meters, the dispenser activates. A time-delayed fuse or altimeter sensor triggers the casing to split open. The submunitions are ejected. Some designs use explosive charges. Others use centrifugal force from spinning. As the bomblets separate, they spread in an elliptical pattern called a footprint. The height, velocity, and spin rate determine how large this footprint becomes. Now let's zoom in on the submunitions. This is where the engineering gets fascinating. Take the BLU-97, one of the most widely deployed submunitions, about 20 centimeters long, 6 centimeters in diameter. This small cylinder is a triple-threat weapon designed to defeat 3 target types simultaneously. First, a shaped charge with a copper cone at the front, capable of penetrating up to 7 inches of armor. When detonated, the copper collapses into a superplastic jet traveling at hypersonic speed, punching through tank armor. Second, the steel casing is pre-scored inside, designed to fragment into approximately 300 metal shards. These fragments are lethal to anyone within a significant radius. Third, a zirconium ring provides an incendiary effect, igniting fires at the impact point. One bomblet armor penetration, fragmentation, and fire all in a single detonation. To ensure proper descent, many submunitions have small parachutes or inflatable balloons. These slow the fall and ensure the bomblet descends nose down, which is critical for the fuse. Most submunitions use an impact fuse detonating when they strike a hard surface. For the BLU-97, arming happens during descent through spin and G forces. Once the bomblet experiences at least 6 Gs while spinning, it arms taking about 2.6 seconds. On impact, a spring-loaded probe drives the firing pin into the detonator. But here's the engineering flaw: this mechanism requires very specific conditions to work. If the bomblet lands at the wrong angle, the probe doesn't drive straight, no detonation. If it lands in soft ground mud, sand, snow, vegetation, there's not enough resistance to trigger it. Damaged parachutes, temperature extremes, old stockpiles all increase failure rates. The result is the dud rate, the percentage of bomblets that fail to explode as intended. Manufacturers claim 2% to 5% failure in controlled tests. But combat conditions are never controlled. Actual dud rates range from 10% to 40%. During the 2006 Lebanon conflict, failure rates reached as high as 40% in some areas. Engineers tried self-destruct mechanisms, a secondary fuse that triggers if impact fails. The M85, for example, should self-destruct within 15 seconds of a failed impact. But field data showed even that mechanism fails about 10% of the time. Now let's look at what Iran has been firing at Israel over the past 2 weeks. The Khorram-Shar-4, also called K-Bar, is a medium-range ballistic missile with a 2,000-kilometer range. It carries a warhead between 1,500 and 1,800 kilograms, one of the largest payloads in Iran's arsenal. According to Israeli military assessments, the cluster warhead opens at approximately 7 kilometers altitude. It releases around 20 submunitions, each carrying about 2.5 kilograms of explosives. These scatter across a diameter of roughly 16 kilometers from a single missile. The missile travels at Mach 16 outside the atmosphere, Mach 8 within, giving defenders almost no time. And here's why this engineering creates a nightmare for missile defense systems. Israel's Arrow and Iron Dome are designed to intercept projectiles on predictable trajectories. The Khorram-Shar-4 uses a maneuverable re-entry vehicle. It can change course during terminal descent. But even if defenders intercept the main missile, it may have already released its payload. Intercepting 20 bomblets the size of hand grenades, falling from 7 kilometers up, is essentially impossible. They're too small, too numerous, and spreading too fast to engage individually. According to the Israeli military, about half of all ballistic missiles Iran is currently firing carry cluster warheads. They're launching these almost daily at major cities Tel Aviv, Beersheba, Rishon LeZion. Since this conflict began in late February 2026, at least 14 Israeli civilians have been killed. More than 2,300 have been injured. On March 9th, 2 construction workers were at a job site in Yehud. When the siren went off, they were 15 steps from the shelter. That's all they needed. But cluster bomblets don't give you 15 steps. They give you nothing. Both men died before they could reach safety. Bomblets have been raining down on residential neighborhoods Holon, Bat Yam, or Yehuda. These aren't military installations. These are places where families live, where kids play in the streets. But the immediate casualties are only part of the equation. Let's talk about the long-term engineering failure. A conventional bomb either explodes or doesn't, and an unexploded one is a single, locatable object. A cluster strike releasing 600 bomblets with a 10% dud rate leaves 60 unexploded devices scattered randomly. Each is small, often the size of a tennis ball, and may be partially buried or hidden in vegetation. Unlike landmines that are placed deliberately and can be mapped, cluster duds fall with no record of their locations. The Israeli military is now distributing flyers to civilians. You know what they say: don't touch anything you find on the ground. It might be an unexploded bomb. Imagine telling your children, if you see something shiny in the yard, don't pick it up, it could kill you. And this isn't theoretical. We've seen exactly what happens when cluster duds accumulate in a country. Between 1964 and 1973, approximately 270 million cluster submunitions were dropped on Laos. That's 90 bombs for every single person living there at the time. About 80 million of those, roughly one-third, failed to explode. More than 50 years after that war ended, approximately 50 people still die every year from these old bombs. And 40% of those casualties are children. Because these bomblets are small, about the size of a tennis ball, kids find them in fields and think they're toys. They pick them up to play with them, and I don't need to finish that sentence. Same pattern in Lebanon: 4.6 million bomblets dropped in 2006, 1 million failed to detonate. Those duds contaminated 26% of southern Lebanon's farmland. Farmers can't work their own fields without risking their lives. This is why over 120 countries signed the Convention on Cluster Munitions in 2008. But Iran never signed, and neither did Israel, the US, Russia, or China. The 5 biggest military powers all decided to keep these weapons in their arsenals. From a pure engineering perspective, cluster munitions work exactly as designed. They efficiently distribute explosive force across a wide area, defeating dispersed targets with a single system. The failure isn't in the design, it's in the assumption that a 10% dud rate is acceptable. When you're launching missiles with 20 bomblets each, even a 10% failure rate leaves thousands of unexploded devices. And those devices don't distinguish between a soldier in 2026 and a child in 2076. Right now, somewhere in Israel, there are unexploded submunitions half buried in the ground, waiting. They could detonate tomorrow, or in 50 years, or a demining team might find them first. We've engineered weapons sophisticated enough to scatter hundreds of bombs across kilometers with perfect timing, but we still can't guarantee they'll all do what they're supposed to do. And until we solve that, every cluster strike plants a future its engineers can calculate but cannot control.